headphones, chart. I'm sitting right behind him. That was my school.
And I felt awful because you're already taking up everybody's time. You're already at least 2 guys in a solo.
And you may think, well, it just holds me back. Well, it should.
Literally.
The Godfather.
One of the craziest things I've ever watched him play was a hubcap.
Welcome to the Studio 101 Recording Podcast. Once again, my name is Brad Phillips. Glad to have you guys joining us, and we've got a great group of guys with us here at the table today to talk about studio recording, studio musicians, what studio musicians do, why these guys do what they do, how they got into it. We've got a ton of stuff in store for you to talk about this week on the podcast. Let me kind of introduce everybody to you. To my right is Mr. Katlin Owen. Katlin, kind of tell everybody like where you're from, height, weight, all those things. How long just where you're from, how you got into studio work, all that kind of stuff. Just kind of share with us a little bit about that.
Yep, I'm Katlin Owen. I'm from Liberty, South Carolina, so about an hour from here. And really, guitar-wise and studio-wise and everything, owe a lot to Jeremy. Danny Crawford is a big one. He's my godfather.
Right.
Literally.
The Godfather.
Yeah.
The Crawford.
And when I was like 13 or so, he took me along, took me to work, and Jeremy was there. Mm-hmm. So it's been a sort of a long-time guitar mentor. Yeah, man, kind of just always been doing it somehow.
Yeah, I mean, like 12 or 13 years old, so everybody gets a picture of this. Katlin is rolling up in here, sort of like observing sessions and stuff at 13 years old. And you're how old now?
33.
Yeah, so 20 years ago,
and
Katlin was hanging.
He was cool because he never said anything.
Yeah,
just sit over in the corner and
observe.
That was because I'm weird.
He was filing away all the information, observing these sessions.
I still play licks that I just saw Jeremy do something, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, so like
make a daddy proud.
Yeah, that's right. I'm still stealing stuff.
So like for Katlin, in Katlin's particular instance, getting in at a young age to observe and kind of understand the way a session works. And Jeremy made a great point, is like if you're out there listening and you have a chance to come and sit in on a session, it's not really your job to really like say anything. You're supposed to just sit there and observe. So, but we've talked about this in a previous episode where interns and people observing sessions and etiquette and all the things. So
you can pick up. Yeah, that's true though. You can pick up a whole lot.
You can pick up a lot by not saying anything.
Yeah.
But you know, there was a time though, and I would ask you, say, "Man, hey, you got any questions?" And you would always be full of questions,
Most of the time
I was more than happy to answer those questions.
Yeah, and you know, we're all fortunate sitting here at the table to have a guy like Jeremy and Chris, all you guys like who are willing to take the time to be like, hey, young 13-year-old dude, come hang out and see what we do, how we do this, and you know, hopefully this is something that you're going to be able to do for a living one day. You know, those kind of things. And you know, I've had tons of people like that in my life, and I'm sure the rest of you guys have had the same. But to be able to have somebody that's willing to let you come in and like mess with your gear and like put your headphones on and listen. I know for Katlin, we used to set up like a extra pair of headphones and just put him in the room over there and just let him listen to the headphone mix like during tracking and stuff, you know. So those are some
on
awesome
that
things.
subject. One cool thing that happened in Katlin's life that I really would have given anything in my life. Well, I kind of had that opportunity now that I think about it. But when he was going to turn 18, his mama called me about, I don't know, a month or so before he turned 18. She said, it's always just wondering if, you know Brent Mason. I said, yeah. I said, if I could get Katlin for his 18th birthday into a session in Nashville, that would be like the best birthday present we could ever give him.
Yeah.
I said, well, I'll tell you what, give me just a few minutes. So I called Brent, and I told him about it. I said, man, I got this young cat that's a great guitar player. And I said, I've been mentoring him for a while, but, you know, he's a huge fan of you. And I said, would it be cool if we got him to come over and for his 18th birthday and just hang out with you one day in the studio. He said, "Man, yeah." I said, "You're talking about the top of the top of the top."
Yeah, especially at that time period.
At that time, that was at the height of Brent's
15
career.
years ago.
7 is when I think that happened. Yeah.
And so he was more than willing to do. Don't be try to get in touch with Brent Mason. I'm a good friends with Brent, and we've done a lot of sessions together. But I had a dynamic with him, and I was able to get and vouch for Katlin to come in, and I think that was a cool thing.
Yeah.
How'd that go?
It was awesome. I went and did the same thing that I would have done here. I just went. At that point, I had started to kind of do some of the gospel sessions and stuff. So I was working a little bit, but then it was cool to go and watch him play.
Just so everybody who's watching knows, Katlin is mainly guitar, acoustic and electric. He definitely can play bass and other stuff and production of his own. But Katlin's main focus has always been on electric guitar, acoustic guitar in the session world. And you've been in the live world as well too. What, the past 5 or 6 years you've had some live gigs and stuff?
Since about 17 is when I've been picked up on some Nashville gigs, touring.
John Party.
Yep. It was Ray Lynn for a while, another girl, Kylie Morgan, for a while, and then Party, for a couple of years.
You can't leave out the Miss Hannah Dasher.
That's right, Hannah Dasher for a while, and most recently Brian Kelly.
Cool. Sir. And we'll get back to some of Katlin's info and your input on session stuff here in just a little bit. I want to go around the rest of the table. The Mr. Chris Knight is in the house with us. Chris, just how many years ago now has it been since you moved back to South Carolina?
Which time?
That's right, because you had a little bit of a Texas stint for a while, right?
We moved from Nashville the first time, 2018. That's when we came back to.
But tell everybody kind of where you're originally from and how you got into this whole world of session work.
Walhalla, South Carolina.
Right.
About from here, probably hour?
It's at least
20?
an hour, yeah.
Something like that. Little town, but grew up in a musical family, grew up in church. My dad was a music pastor, so I kind of grew up playing in church. Moved to Nashville in 2004. My brother, who was way more talented than me, also just like musical genius, killer piano player, arranger, producer. He really helped me get in the game, not by hiring me. When he started getting it on sessions, he invited me to Nashville, and I would sit in like what we've been talking about. He used a drummer named Scott Williamson, who he's a hero of mine, just an amazing talent.
Right.
So I got to sit in on those sessions with Scott, and same deal, headphones, chart, I'm sitting right behind him. That was my school, and I got to do that for a few years before I moved to Nashville in 2004. Right. And once I got to town, it was just kind of meeting people, and I did the touring thing for a little bit, and you get one session here, one session there, and it starts to kind of snowball as long as you're doing all right, and kind of did all right. So,
what was your first gig? Remind me of your first gig.
The very first one?
Yeah.
The one that got me to town was a sister group, a contemporary Christian group called Everlife.
Yeah.
Young, like really young girls. They were kind of teenagers really at the time.
Totally remember those girls.
Yeah. Very
cool.
That was the first one.
And then Leanne Rhymes after that?
Yeah, there was a few in between Everlife and Leanne. After Everlife, I was out with a worship band called Sonic Flood a couple of different times, actually. Then kind of stepped into the country realm. Carolyn Dawn Johnson, who was a Canadian artist, who came down here and had some really nice success. And then went from her to Leanne Rhymes.
Yeah. Killer. Montgomery Gentry also.
Montgomery Gentry
was kind of
after
like
Leanne.
Montgomery Gentry was like your last road gig. Is that
correct? Was the last touring gig, yeah.
Yeah. Got you. Killer. We'll come back, and I got a bunch of questions for you.
Sure.
Later on.
All right.
So we'll move around the table to Mr. Jeremy Medkiff man of many talents, many personalities. I'm not sure if the personalities are going to come out on the podcast here today or not, but you know, in the studio, Jeremy, there's never a dull moment when Jeremy's in the studio. And Jeremy, so you're originally from the Memphis area, is that correct?
Originally, I was born in Key West, Florida, of all places. Moved to the Memphis area when I was about 4 years old. So
right.
That's kind of where I grew up, and just off of Beale Street there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Moved to Nashville when I was 15.
Yeah.
And started working with a gospel group called the Freemans.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Lifetime ago.
Man.
And I finished my high school years and graduated on a bus.
Yeah.
I didn't graduate on the bus, but I finished my school on the bus.
Right.
And all I ever wanted to do was play guitar, man. Yeah. That's all I cared about. I prepared for college and high school, but it was like when I got that call to go, it's like, man, I went.
Yeah. If you could put a number on it, how many years have you been actively doing like session work?
I did my first session at 14.
Right.
Legitimate and got paid. And you'll never guess what drummer I worked with.
I know who it is.
You've told me this, but I forgot.
Greg Morrow.
Mm-hmm. Of all people, Greg Morrow.
First session with Greg Morrow.
That one was in Memphis, right?
That was in Memphis at a place called Crosstown Studio that Greg actually owned.
Right.
Mm.
And the producer, I got the call, and it's like for some girl that sang with Truth.
Oh,
I don't remember her name now,
Truth,
but
man,
she was one of those.
Mm-hmm.
And it was that was I'm like, I was 14.
Yeah,
that's pretty good, but not really any better than I was then. But
yeah,
so that tells you anything.
Hilarious.
Anyway, so how many years? So since 14, I'm 50. I'm terrible. I'm a musician, so I'm terrible at math. So 14 and 52. How's that? How many years is that?
It's 38.
Mm-hmm.
38 years, man. That's nuts.
Mm-hmm.
That's how many years I've been doing this.
Crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty awesome.
I should be a whole lot better at it than
no way, man. No way. Jeremy's played on and been around more stuff than everybody I know in my entire life. It's wild. He could probably tell us a whole ton of stories about different experiences, good, bad, and ugly. We might get there. But Jeremy has been and actively continually doing session work in Nashville. He, obviously Jeremy lives close to here at the studio now. What, like 35, 40 minutes away,
about
maybe?
40 minutes. Went in 2011. I married Valerie and moved from Nashville to Greenville. Never thought I would live in this area of the country. What's so ironic is for many years I actually drove over here.
Yeah.
Because you don't say no to anything when you're doing this for a living. You never say no. So I had some producers in this town, thanks to Danny Crawford. Danny Crawford, I don't know what to do with my hands. Danny Crawford got me in some of these things over here, and I was working in Nashville, but I'd also drive over here.
Yeah.
Working, man, like for guys like Eddie Howard.
Yep.
Matt Schwartz.
Actually, Matt's was where I met you.
Yeah.
My first session was at Matt's.
Shout out to Matt Schwartz.
Yeah, I was 17.
Yeah. Eddie and Matt, and I want to get Eddie on at some point. Possibly, maybe I could get Eddie and Matt at the same time. That might be kind of cool. Eddie, in our particular area, I guess, just to give everybody kind of a viewpoint of where we are, the upstate of South Carolina, between Greenville and Spartanburg. Mark V Studios was a huge influence in music in this little area. The Huffman,
a great room, too.
The Huffman brothers, they had an original Neve console over there, 2-inch Atari. Eddie was
bought from Pat Benatar.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
and so in our area, we have some pretty rich, music engineers, sound engineers, session players, and stuff.
You wouldn't think it, but it's true.
Yeah, it really is.
There's some really deep talent.
Yeah,
here.
and I mean, we could start. We could go through a huge list of people, which someday maybe I'll do that. But we're in a. I always tell people from Nashville or wherever they are that I feel like we're in an anomaly of the part of the United States, and I mean we really like.
We absolutely are. There's no, dude. I play with steel toe whenever I
Yeah.
can anymore. But man, it's unreal to think that there's a handful. It's unreal to think there's a handful of vocalists with steel toe that are as good as they are.
Oh, yeah.
All within the same zip code or two.
Yeah.
Just like that by itself. Plus enough musicians to keep a gig like that running, 2 or 3 bands at once sometimes. You know?
It's quite remarkable.
It's ridiculous. Yeah.
It really is. I mean, I don't know what kind of a radius you want to put it in. 50 miles from here, maybe.
It's a 50 or 60 mile radius. There's just a collective of talent that's exceptional. It's way above average.
Yeah, it's not normal, and it's hard for people to understand it when I tell them that. And I mean, if you look at some session players in Nashville now, you look at some road gig players. I mean, South Carolina, North Carolina, South Carolina. I mean, these guys we've kind of supplied Nashville a lot of times, in my opinion, with some really, really great resources and musicians.
Well, people go where the work is. So
For sure.
a lot of the work is in Nashville.
Sure.
We have a good bit that has started here. So and has been for years. Like I said, I've been coming over here for
And
a lot of
that
years.
reminds me.
Never thought I'd live here.
Were you guys ever around Jeremy when he was driving his little white? Was it a rodeo? What was it?
You had a silver rodeo, right?
No, it was a white Pathfinder.
Oh, okay, that's it. Yeah.
And Jeremy would load that thing up with gear and drive from Nashville to like the North Carolina coast. He would come down here, Georgia, Alabama, and burning it up.
Yeah.
Like he would come in here rolling in, and he was in Alabama the day before, and like
for a lot
2
of
hours of sleep.
I was gonna say I remember the sleeping in between songs, and I remember
He still does that.
I remember you sleeping. I remember at GAT 3 seeing you like. You opted to just even skip lunch that day because you just were so
Needed some
tired.
sleep,
You were like,
man.
I'm not even hungry. I just want to sleep.
And that's a life. That's a life. And you and I have talked about this. There's a incredible musician, Mr. David Johnson, who lives up in Wilkesboro County in North Carolina that we all love and adore. And we've talked about the life that you guys have lived as session musicians for 30 something years. Has been studio to studio to studio, sometimes 5 days a week. You're finishing at 9 o'clock at night in Alabama, and you got to be in Georgia at a different studio the next day. Yeah. And that's you're making a living doing that 4 or 5 days a week, and you're just burning it up, burning the road up. You know,
and as things progressed in my career, I've stayed in town a lot more in Nashville, which was great.
Yeah.
But I still never stopped going out of town.
Yeah.
It's been a good, been a great run. I'm still running, so
yeah, and it's the climate of all that has morphed, I guess, so to speak, in my career. I guess the studio has been here 24 years, believe it or not. The studio has been here, and so in that span of time, I know we all have seen all the music industry morph, but there's more remote sessions being done, and there's more ways to connect than there used to be. My favorite is still having these guys in the room all at the same time and hitting the red button. That's still my favorite way to do things.
It's
but
easy.
there's more ways than one now to make production work, to connect with session musicians. I mean, Brent Mason, like a lot of the average everyday public has access to send Brent stuff for him to work on, that was something that did not exist in not even the mid-late 90s. Like that wasn't a thing. Like you were going to Omni, or you're going to wherever, County Q, and cutting stuff, and you know what I mean? I mean, even though there's studios like ours here in South Carolina, Eddie Howard was over in Greenville. There's several places in North Carolina that have really great studios, but we had to get you guys to kind of come to us.
Yeah.
But now, I feel super blessed where we are, because like all of these guys I can call and they can be here within 35, 40 minutes, which is incredible.
We have a really great rhythm section that can track. And then if you need, Mike Johnson on steel, man, you can send
just shoot it over to him. Yeah.
And you can make a great record.
Yeah.
That way. Now there's something to be said for guys in a room. Something's happening all at once.
Yep.
There's a certain magic that happens there, and I think there always will be, but it's not to diminish the fact that we can get great records
Sure.
by that,
Yeah.
by proxy.
Yeah, you know, like, and I guess even one step further, like all the COVID era of stuff it took remote to a whole different level.
Sure did.
It made it okay in a lot of ways too.
It did. Yeah.
It made it more like once it took forcing a few of the big guys to have to work remotely for it to become okay.
Yeah,
because it made it okay.
Kind of didn't have a choice in some situations, and like the technology part of stuff is what kind of triggered my interest in some of this. Is like, you know, we can set up cameras. I know during COVID, we set up. There was 3 or 4 guys in the room here tracking. We set up cameras. David Johnson's in North Carolina. The client's in Ohio. Yeah. And we're all working off of a network camera to track 10 songs for a whole record. You know what I mean? So it's like, it just blows my mind. We were
happy to do it because it was like, okay, we hadn't worked in a little while, and sign me up.
Yes. So the ability to be able to do all that stuff still kind of blows my mind, but that's kind of where we are now.
Man.
So
yeah, the COVID thing definitely marked a chapter for me. It sucked. It was awful. But like, as far as
opened some doors that you otherwise may
big
not
time
have.
Opened up a couple of things, because there was like, for whatever reason, a lot of factors. A lot of the writers, or a lot of the artists in town were like forced off the road. They're all at home twiddling their thumbs. They start writing. They're calling up all and I mean big artists. They're calling up all these hit songwriters that they know, and luckily a few of those producers were my clients, and were using me so they start sending demos, and now demos are just like flooding in. Then these artists got to keep something rolling. They're wanting to work on albums, and a couple of things came through that were like, I'm not sure I would have ever gotten the opportunity to play on this album had I not been set up at home, literally waiting on something, on the next thing to come through, and it some of it was being present to win. And that kind of was because of COVID. Not going to say it was a good thing, but I'm just saying things changed big time.
So this brings up a question to my mind. I'll ask Katlin first. So what percentage of the records that you play on, what do you feel like the percentage of is where you're remote as opposed to like in the room? Like, how does that balance out for you? Have you ever thought about that?
All releases all together, including indie releases?
Yeah.
Because oddly, I probably do more indie releases here.
Gotcha. You're talking about on site in the room here,
and more on the card label stuff remotely.
Yeah, I gotcha.
It winds up being that way because like most of my Nashville clients are totally fine with sending remote stuff, and then so it's probably about half and half.
50, kind of a 50. Chris, how do you feel like drum wise? Like,
luckily, the majority of my stuff is in the room with other guys. Although I do the remote thing as well.
Yeah. Well, Chris, you have a remote client overseas that sends you basically only drums. You just track drums and send them back. Mm-hmm. How often does that happen for you?
Oh
typically?
Man, multiple times a month. That's usually 3 or 4 times a month.
Right.
He's
and that's a particular he's like a long time client.
Man, I've been doing stuff for him since like 2010 or so. He's in Dublin, Ireland.
Yeah.
And he tracks a lot of traditional country music, which is
cool.
Which is a hoot, but it's a big deal over there.
He's probably crushing it.
He's killing it. He's killing it. And he turns out really good product. The tracks are great.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Jared, as far as like the scope of in person and remote sessions and stuff? Like, what do you feel like
it's along the same lines of Chris. The majority of stuff I do is probably in a room with guys, but there's usually always something stacked up at home at the same time. It's still good.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. So as far as home setups, Jeremy's probably the exception at the table. With Jeremy has a room that's built out specifically for mixing and overdubbing and amps and vocals and all the stuff. Jeremy has a specific spot at his house.
That's not
nice.
Not even close to what he has, Brad.
Jeremy has a really nice setup.
I think the listener deserves a little more unpacking than that.
Yeah, I mean, Jeremy has a spectacularly nice room.
It's very nice.
You may have to float in a picture.
He should be of this.
He's like
If this was weapons, he would be on a watch list. Yeah, absolutely. There's no, dude. It's
Don't tell my wife.
it is the room. Yeah, hope she's not.
Well, listen.
listening to
In
this.
your defense, she told me this week she doesn't know what you do in there, so as long as you,
As long as we keep it that
As
way,
long-
it's fine.
yeah,
hopefully she'll watch this and get that piece of information.
No, she comes in a lot. Trust me. So, what were you saying? I'm sorry.
it's the it's the most ridiculous. That's a dream room. It's a dream setup.
It's been my dream for
You
many
can tell
years.
everybody.
Yeah.
I'll start, and then you should actually tell people. But it's just there's a wall of amps.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
an amazing switcher, and everything sounds awesome, and you're firing off lines to a bunch of different cabs and a million different mics that you can
Yeah.
select back and forth. It's just it's a guitar overdub / mixing paradise.
Well, to me, like
And
you
Jeremy
know,
will tell you exactly what it is.
yeah, I
Now,
mean, like you have a successful dude like Jeremy who's been in the game a long time.
what's he gonna do? Blow it on guitar stuff?
Yeah, I mean,
Why not?
Why not?
That's what
yeah, I mean, this is what
I've
he
always
does.
wanted to do.
It's what he does for a living, you know. So in my mind, it's like you're going to do the best case scenario. I mean, you possibly can create at your
Absolutely.
house. I know, Chris, you got a mix room set up at your house now, right?
I do now. Yeah, I'm just building that out. But eventually, looking at building an actual detached studio
Like
to
for a
track
drum
drums.
room and stuff.
Yeah, we just bought a new house back in September, and we've got some good property. And so I want to do what Jeremy's done
yeah,
for myself.
sure.
But I'm fortunate to know you and to be able to use your room because I keep a kit here and
Yeah,
a ton of snares and cymbals, so I'm able to track stuff here
man. It's,
remotely.
And it sounds
drums
great.
sound great.
Yeah,
Drums sound
they're
great.
fantastic.
That's probably one of my favorites.
well, it helps when you have incredible guys like Chris playing and know how to, beat
Well,
on the kit. So
I've said it a million times. If you got a great player with a great kit who
Yeah.
knows how to tune the kit,
yeah,
you got great mics, you got great mic pre's, man, you can't go wrong. I mean, all you got to do is pull faders up, and it's
That's-
going to be good.
yeah. That's been my MO for a long time. Just hit the button. Just hit the button and let Chris do his thing. And then as far as like my end from an engineer standpoint, like I have a mobile rig, like my laptop. I can take an iLock. Most all of my plugins are available if I'm traveling somewhere and I need to pull up a mix or whatever, which kind of stinks. Like you have to duplicate my control room setup to be able to travel or whatever and do edits and work on stuff. But I think that's a part of today's 2024 session musician engineer studio people. Like you got to be able to be flexible. You got to be able to work remote. You got to be able to have all the stuff. And Katlin, we were talking earlier. Katlin has the torpedo amp. What is the correct term? Reamper.
No.
It's an IR.
Yeah, it's an IR loader. It's an IR loader, and it's the reactive low box. So there's really no like reamping.
The Captor torpedo is what I was trying to say earlier.
The Captor X is the one. That's the reactive load one, and it's also an attenuator. I don't use it for that though.
Yeah.
I really just wanted something. So, my setup's probably the simplest.
Yeah, let's segue to that because I think like gear and setup and tips and tricks and things is probably where we need to go next. But like, let me interject real quick for Katlin. Like in Katlin's case, with something like the Captor, he can bring in his head, whatever amp head. I do have cabinets here. We can mic cabinets here. You can go to other places and mic a cabinet. The cool thing about the Captor deal is that it sounds like a cabinet. I mean, like if you're coming into any session, in my opinion, Jeremy may have a different opinion. A lot of studios in Nashville would prefer the cab and the mic and all the things, which is great. I love it. We can do that here. But if you're traveling, touring, you're bouncing around to a bunch of different studios. If you have a setup like the Captor with a super realistic sounding amp,
It's beyond.
man, it is
super
crazy how
realistic.
great
It's
it
just
sounds.
like, it's hard enough, even using a true, like, if you're good with using your amp models and stuff, even if you were using a modeler, it's amazing.
Kemper,
but like
Helix,
this-
Quad Quartet, all that stuff.
this splits the tech load in half to where really the only tech piece is the IR, and I don't know anything about IRs. I'm not a gear nut like that, but man, it's unreal.
Yeah.
You can feel it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I still love amp models, use them all the time, especially live, because that's just kind of the...
And you're a Helix guy,
Yep.
HX guy?
Yep, HX
basically.
stuff. Love those. It's just super easy, and like I said, not a nerd about it. I'm not a deep diver. That loader that we used today sounded amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing. I just plugged it in, and I made it. I seriously tweaked knobs until I thought I wasn't going to blow anything up, and I started using it, and I haven't dug an ounce deeper than that.
I think that's part of the beauty of something like the Torpedo is the fact
Simple
that
enough.
the cabinets are there and they're mic'd and they're like ready to take your...
I'll tell
signal.
you, it's not a paid sponsorship. It's simple enough for somebody like me to use it and enjoy it.
Yeah.
But you can tell by looking at that app. And I don't even. There's probably
pretty sophisticated.
there's probably something. I'm sure there's something. I should probably have an editor on my computer, and I don't. I just have the phone.
Yeah.
Because I didn't go much farther than that. But you can tell by that. You can go deep in that thing.
Well,
Like
the
it's
thing
crazy.
is, they've got it set up to where, I mean, there's so much readily available right there just going through
On
it.
the
that's
phone.
usable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so many
But-
presets.
But if you're a nerd about it, you can go deep dive
can
in
get
all
weird.
you want to.
Yeah.
And I was impressed. That's the first time I've seen it was today.
But I
Yeah.
didn't. A handful of the presets, I was like, okay, at home for sure. Even though I've got a handful of cabs that I really love, at home my setup is kind of like we're building a house right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm building a studio right now, which means if you follow me on Instagram, which you probably should, my days at the demo dungeon are numbered. Yeah. So like right now,
That is fantastic.
I'm overdubbing in a basement, a block basement, and like, yep, I have and I can set up that cab and throw my slate mic on it or a 57 or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, I don't have I don't have that mic locker that's in the capture,
Right.
and it nails it,
yeah.
and it's clean as a whistle. I don't have. Oh, my dog just ran across the hardwood floor that's on top of me right now, and now that's in my guitar track. I have to,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Little
Well-
things like that matter. And
Well, and I think that's something to point out for people who might be listening is the fact that, like, I mean, if you don't know who Katlin is, never heard of him, I mean, Katlin has played on songs that are like on the radio, like right now, and capturing killer guitar tones that are going to producers from the basement. So there's you know what I mean? It's like there's a whole other perspective to be seen from that, and the tones that he's getting are super fantastic. It's not cheesy. It's not. They sound incredible,
dude, I think that you've said this like since I was a kid. It's get good on what you've got, and really, really just sell it. Get as good as you can. Make it sound awesome. And if it sounds good and you can play good through it, that's kind of it. And I heard I watched that Ostrander's channel on YouTube. He did a little he was breaking down his home rig.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, yeah, he's like, I'm firing off to this Morgan downstairs, whatever, in my garage. I mean, that's a dude who's playing on a lot of stuff. And he's like, well, that's mic'd up in my garage. He was like, if I'm feeling it, I might run through my captor. He's like, or I might plug into my rev. A lot of guys use those revs that have built-in captors. He's like, and you know what? No one ever asks, hey, was that your amp model? Could you go back and do it with
the
real
tone?
No, it sounds awesome. Send it.
Yeah, the tone and the fingers and the everything and the guitar choices is what people are looking for.
Yeah.
Most of these, as far as production wise and record labels and all those things, they're just looking for the great tone and sound, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was refreshing for me to hear him say that, because I was like, well, yeah, because you don't talk about it. I'm not going to be like, hey, just before I play on this, I just want to let you know that, you don't.
you're not gonna do
I'm like,
that.
no, I'm going to full send it with what I've got that I can make sound good. And honestly, playing at home, right, for like this week, if I'm going to go home and do some overdubs, I'm going to plug into that thing, and it's going to be the absolute best product that I can deliver.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What-
absolutely.
So we'll come back to Jeremy in a second. Chris, from a drum standpoint, as far as the setup in the studio that you have and the drum choice and all of those things. I know from a drummer standpoint coming into the studio, you're kind of at the mercy of the engineer, and maybe we can hit on that a little bit as to like
Indeed.
mic placement, mic choice, mic pre's. But as far as the gear that you're bringing into the room, like, can you give us an overview of like what you're thinking on a tracking day? Like, do you want to cover all the bases and have something that stylistically would fit anything, or like what are you thinking when you're coming into a tracking day as far as that goes?
Yeah. I think the most important thing, like if I'm using let me preface by saying most studios these days, and even in Nashville, have house kits. So bringing your own full kit thing is sometimes not
used to be
not
a
an
cartage
option.
thing.
Right. But so with that in mind, I bring 5 to 6 snares, and a ton of cymbals. For whatever reason, I've always been a cymbal guy because you can get a ton of textures and stuff like that depending on what you're playing that day. And most days, and correct me if I'm wrong, you don't know what you're going to be playing till you show up.
Yeah.
You know?
You got to be prepared for anything.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
And everything.
Yeah. So for me, it's that. And then if I am playing a house kit, it's really trying to get there early, tuning, because you don't know what kind of kit you're playing on.
Yeah.
So like to me, that's the most important.
Yeah. I got you. Chris, you do several things in sessions that I think are super cool, and hopefully you can share some thoughts with this. But percussion wise, there's some layer things that you think through after the drum track is done. You know, I can always see your brain turning, like maybe it needs this, maybe it needs a shaker, maybe it needs. One thing I love that Chris does, he does like a brush snare thing on a lot of modern country stuff that is super cool. Chris also has, stuff on your laptop, programming wise. We can pull up Contact, all those kind of things. What can you share with the listeners, kind of what your thought process is with that, as far as like, hey, we need to program a shaker, or hey, I'm going to go in and play a shaker, or like what's the thought process on those aux percussion kind of things?
Yeah. There's 2 factors. One, what does it serve in the song? 2, how much time do we have? And I always hate that because with being a creative, like you really want to dig in and spend 2 hours, and like I could layer 15 different percussion tracks.
Yeah.
You can't always do that.
Right.
It's funny you say I'm thinking after the fact about the percussion part or anything like that. It's actually before I lay down the drum track. Usually,
right,
I can kind of hear either a loop or some sort of shaker thing, so that actually affects how I'm playing my drum part. If that makes any sense. It's not necessarily the other way around. And somebody who's influenced me so much is Eric Darkin, who's probably the best percussionist
Indeed.
ever.
Yeah.
Go look him up, kids.
He's the man.
He has played on everything you've ever heard on the radio ever. He's
Not only in country,
Yes.
but also in
Yeah.
mainstream pop.
Yes.
I mean, all over the place.
Right.
I mean, he's working for me right now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just,
Yeah.
I can't hardly stand to do a record without him.
Exactly. He adds so much, but
He's an inspiration.
for sure.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate. A long time ago, when I was still in Nashville, we ended up on the same tracking date, which was so cool and so different, because that's not typical to have a percussionist on a rhythm section date.
Yeah.
And
It's amazing.
it blew my mind.
Yeah.
And it made me approach everything I was doing so differently.
Right.
So I carried that mentality, on.
Right.
And to go back to your question, I try, again, what serves the song, get the drum track down, and then just try and do what you can with the time you got. You might obviously you don't want to be, sitting there for 45 minutes,
Waiting on the drummer.
just trying to do a little shaker thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the snare thing is where I got that from Eric.
Yeah.
He showed
great.
that to me when I was like, I think I was 20 years old or something. He's
Yeah.
like, man, flip the snare upside down
That's
and play it
fantastic.
with some brushes. Huh? Oh my gosh, that is so
One of the
cool.
craziest things I've ever seen Eric do. Now, just since we're there, I have to mention.
Oh
this.
yeah, do it.
You're talking about a guy who is extremely creative and doesn't have typical percussion instruments. One of the craziest things I've ever watched him play was a hubcap off of like a Chrysler, in the 1970s. It was a hubcap. Wow. And something about this particular hubcap had a tone and had a sound and a certain vibe. There was a cymbal that he had bought, and SIR ran over it with a truck.
Get out.
And it bent it all up. And he was like, okay. and he said, I used to like the cymbal when I had it, but after they ran over it, I loved it.
Even better.
Oh yeah.
Because it totally changed the dynamic of how it sounded and everything. Yeah. I'm just saying, and he's one of those guys that would go around.
Oh he's always
knocking on stuff and trying to find tone everywhere. I mean, he could use this mic stand and he could play something beautiful,
amazing.
Make something out of it.
Yeah,
I'm just saying. I just had to say that.
No. It makes me think because not too long ago we were on a session together, and he took a basket, like a woven basket that had like potato chips and crackers and all this stuff, and he's like, "Hey, check this out," and used it as a backbeat.
Yeah,
as like an effects thing.
Killer.
Just like you would just never think.
Snare.
Yeah, against the snare. It's like stuff you would just never think.
Yeah. And here's when I sell clients on Eric Darkin.
Hiring Eric, yeah.
What I do is I take previous records and I'll play them something, and I'll go, okay, you checking this out? It's like I've got the session open.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, it feels good. And I was like, and I'll mute his parts and I'll say, now how does it feel?
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, what happened?
Yeah.
It's still great because you got all these great elements, great playing, but it's just that brings such an energy, and I just don't know how else to put it. Just it's magic, pixie dust. Yes, I don't know what it is, and I'm not weird.
Well, I don't know about that.
That's debatable.
Let's debate.
Yeah. No comment on that one.
Anyway, big shout out to Eric Dark.
Oh
yeah, for sure. So kind of in line with that thought process, there's like when there's 4 or 5 of you guys in working on a session, somebody's always a session leader. Typically they've written the charts for the day, for the song or whatever. And there's a time of you listen to the demo, and there's a time of communication between the musicians and the artists and all those things. When you guys get the chart, listen to the demo, Jeremy specifically is sometimes the bass player and the acoustic player and the electric player. But I mean, Jeremy wears a lot of hats a lot of times. But like, what is you guys' thought process when you're listening to a demo, reading a chart, getting ready to like come in the room and hit the red button? Like, is there a thought process that you have between bass and drums, between guitar parts where you're gonna feel? What can you give me? Just some tidbits of kind of what you guys are thinking during that process.
There's 2 key components for me personally that I want to take away from the demo. One is, what is the vocal doing? Mm-hmm. What is the phrasing of the vocal? And I know this is extremely important for drummers. Mm-hmm. Listen to the vocal. And I try to, and then aside from what the vocal's doing, I try to figure out, I try to hear, a lot of times I hear the finished product in my head.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the producer in me, I don't know, but I hear the finished product, and I'm thinking about, does this song feel R&B? Does it feel traditional country? Does it feel this is like a modern country thing, or this is a worship thing, or whatever that is? And you kind of start thinking about elements, but hardly ever. And Katlin may think differently about this. Like if I'm getting ready to layer, I know I'm going to have to layer 6 guitars.
Right.
I'm not always sure what it actually is until I start playing. I just know that I want this clean sound in the verses, and I'm going to come up with a little party thing, and then the chorus is going to open it up. And I know that that's going to be the general thought, but I'm not sure until I start playing what it even is.
Oh, that makes me feel so good.
Yeah.
Because it's the thing. It's like your soul just kind of starts to bring things out.
Right.
You don't preconceive, oh my gosh, what am I going to play? No, I don't think about it. I just go in there and do it. And sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not so good. But most of the time you try to hit that target. But those are the 2 elements that I listen to more than anything.
Yeah.
It's the vocal.
Kat, you got anything to interject there?
Yeah, similar. I definitely listen. Y'all are listening for phrasing and time and stuff for your kick pattern and the overall like feel.
And it should always go with a vocal.
Yeah, for me, so maybe not all genres, but definitely in where like modern country is at right now, the load on the guitarist is pretty
Hefty,
significant.
yeah.
Yeah, you got a lot. Is there a solo? You're probably gonna be playing it.
Yep.
Is the song is gonna have some kind of sig lick? You're doing that too.
Yeah.
I like to listen to the vocal, the melody in hopes that I can
Find a
Pull
hook.
find
something out
something.
of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, please sing something interesting in this chorus.
Exactly. And
then
when
you're
it's
like,
not.
and when they do it, you know right away. And if they don't, you're like, better start thinking.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm zoned out immediately. Like by the first turn, if I hadn't heard anything cool, yeah, I'll see y'all in 10 minutes. Like I'm just, I'm trying to think of something that's going to fit. And then I would say it's probably about half and half. A lot of times I get in here and like I might have a line in my head. I'll quickly try to get it down. Probably have no clue where I'm going on the solo. That's going to happen. And then, probably half of the time, whatever I thought of in there, it nails it.
Yeah.
And the other half, I have to
Yeah,
think of something else. And then half of the times that it works okay, I probably hit something in the solo or in the outro that I like a little bit better, that I might go back and change.
Many times.
So a lot of times what the soul brings out works better anyways, but I'm really focused on, that can be the hardest thing, especially, it depends on who the producer is, but man, they can beat you up on those sig licks.
Yeah.
A lot of times I find myself relying on, if I can't think of one voice to make the whole thing sound cool, I'll do it with two, like with two guitars. It'll have to be it's not really a call and response, but it kind of is. You kind of have to you kind of got to make them both work together and fill that space to make it to where, man, soon as so-and-so hits play, or as soon as it comes on the streaming, they know what that song is in just a few seconds.
So with you in particular, I want to ask you this directly because I've been around you since you were 13 and kind of developing in this whole process of getting paid professionally to be a studio musician. And don't shoot me, but like Katlin and I have been in here and like took 700 takes on stuff like when you were 18 or 19 or 20 and like just hammering out.
Yeah.
Like tell me now, looking back, what you see where you were trying to figure out all of these things about, oh, here's what I'm listening for. This is what I'm going to hit. This is my target lick that I'm going to play. Like going through that whole process of really like refining yourself to get to the point to where like now when, specifically you, when you come in, you're two passes on a guitar solo and we're done. We're moving on. We're not taking 700 takes on a guitar. Like what's your thought process?
Every now and then there's going to be something. Every now and then it might happen once a session or once a week where there's going to be something that hangs you up or hangs the producer up a little bit and he wants to dig in on something, or you want to try something, and you should take time to work it out if you've got it. But it's a mixture of like wanting to be competitive and wanting to get out there and just nail everything, kill everything. And also, working with, there's been a couple of different producers, like, Corey Crowder's one of them, who, thank God, that, the guys has used me so much. But, man, you want to talk about, especially in demo, like even for demos, like you might build out this full pack of guitars that, like, they're working together, everything's good. I send it off, feeling good. I step away from the desk, and I get a text from Corey, hey, man, can you just maybe take another swing at it? I don't know how many times, and you need to just like, it knocks you down, but it's just like, I'm trying to dig out what he's talking about in these references. So some of that's working with your crew and knowing what they're really talking about. When he says, hey, this one has a pontoon vibe, or nope, this one's got a whiskey glasses vibe. You know, and you like know kind of what he's talking about now.
Yeah.
I think for me on the as far as like not doing the 7 million takes,
Yeah.
It's
was there an aha? I guess what I'm saying is, was there like an aha moment over the past 20 years where coming in you were like, okay, I got this, I'm fixing to crush it, and this is what I'm doing, instead of like the like trial and error, like running through different tones. And I guess that some of that comes with just the literal experience.
Yeah, there's
over and over and over.
It's the experience, but getting in the headspace.
It's reps. It's like you got to get reps.
Getting in the headspace of like, I was bad about zoning out during our
when you listen to the demo.
Yep, listening to that, I was bad to just get off in my own world and not be like, you're at work, you know, all the time. Like, especially if you're doing the guitar seat, it's just like that's a special time in there to like. The most of my work is done in there. I feel like it's just like think. Come in here, like get the thinking over with, so you can come in here and because it's already like you're going to be sitting down there and trying to pick sometimes which amp to plug into and then it's just get this tone just right because man, once it's printed, it's not much you can do, but you got to kind of nail it.
What do you say though, based on his question to you? I know this has been my experience because I've been through that same kind of thing. You know, early on, you're still learning.
Yeah.
It's like you're still trying to figure this thing out.
Always,
And you're always second guessing yourself, right?
Yeah.
And so during that process of that's like something you've got to go through as doing this. And as you grow and mature and season as a musician, particularly a studio musician, you get to the point to where it's not as easy as breathing, but it's like you're living in it now. Your instincts grow sharper.
Yeah.
Your creativity is sharper because you've done it. You've been here. You've been in that seat multiple times.
Yeah.
It's not new anymore. It's a cool thing because you're seasoned now.
Yeah.
And so now you can just know what to do.
I mean, it's playing out live. It's also woodshedding in the basement, dialing up tones and stuff that when we have a particular sound we're looking for, whether it's drums, guitars, bass.
Yep.
If we're saying Motown, I know what we're going for with that. You can automatically pull up the tones and the drums and all the things, and you have an approach in your head. But that's also years of just woodshedding those things outside of this room.
Oh yeah.
And
let me add this: it's about confidence. Not only confidence in your playing, confidence in your ability, but also confidence in your gear. Guitar players, look, know your gear, know what it does, and also we live and die by our rigs. Mm-hmm. If I come in with a pedal board that's got cheap cables and I don't know if something's going to short out and I'm always worried about something going wrong,
because something will, even with good stuff. But boy, you got to do everything you can.
You can't be worried about that because what that does is it steals from your creativity, it steals from your confidence. If you've got to be able to depend on your rig, make sure if you got to get somebody to build it for you, build it and don't spare expense when it comes to these things because it's extremely important in this world. If you're trying to do this,
there's been boy, that's a big question. But yeah, there's been little things along the way. Some of it personal conviction. Like I felt. There's been a handful of times where we've done that, where we've done 7 million takes of something, a solo, or me just like not being able to get it that day or whatever. And I felt awful because you're already taking up everybody's time. You're already at least 2 guys in a solo.
Yeah.
Most of the time. And God forbid if you're slip seating and playing acoustic too, these guys are sitting in the control room waiting on you for a long
Chris
time.
Is one take.
Because you've got to get home.
Drums is one take.
Like it's about
you've got to be mindful of those.
Yeah,
things.
and you're trying to just nail it and crush everything, not just for your product, but to be considerate for everybody else.
Yeah.
Every session is going to be different. Sometimes you only have to be one guy.
Yeah.
Not usually.
But
most of the time, you're a lot of guys.
And I'm not picking on you, but I just know.
No, that's great.
Personal experience between me and you coming in for 20 years is the fact that this is a refining process. You have to have seat time. You have to have woodshed time at home You have to know what tones to pull up, what guitar to grab.
Dude, yeah.
Same thing with, Chris and percussion, like he was talking about earlier. You have to be able to have the particular shaker that needs, on this song or whatever it is, tambourine or whatever. It's definitely not something that's an overnight thing to figure out. So
no, I think when I was in that season, I had been over focused on being a player. Everything's important, obviously. You want to be a well-rounded guitarist. I think I was heavy on the player side for a long time. I think what hit next was, and I remember one instance where we were here, and gosh, we played through in the control room, we played through the tune, and then the artist had a reference. They were like, "Man, I really love this little guitar part," and I knew the song, like it was like a radio country song, or it was like at least an album cut on something. I was very familiar with the reference. And I knew the effect that was on it, but it was not something that I had really ever tinkered with. And this goes to knowing your rig. Mm-hmm. I'm naturally just not a gear nut. I just said it talking about the Captor. And I remember I remember playing it, and I did it a couple of times and got it okay. But I remember walking away frustrated. Jeremy was playing bass that day, and he was like, "Yeah, man, that's why you really got to know your gear." And you just got to, and I was like, "You're right. I didn't know what the heck to do with that. I really wasn't sure. It's gonna take just things biting you in the butt like that sometimes, and that shook me enough. Like there's these little things that have shook me enough to where next week something's probably gonna get me again. But it's just like those little things. I feel like now though, I'm a little bit more. I'm just trying to get your process dialed. You want to just annihilate everything. Just be a machine. Get it done. Nail it.
Yeah.
Move on to the next one. Keep things moving.
For sure.
It takes years to get to that point. And I'm not sure if we ever really get to that point or not.
Yeah. So couple more things and we'll wrap up. But as far as the dynamic between bass and drums in this studio setting, I've worked with you guys a long time, and I know the dynamic between, the way we have you guys set up in here, you can see each other is one thing, but then another thing is from a bass standpoint, working out patterns and all of those things. Does that something with you guys? A lot of times it just happens, and it's weird and awesome at the same time. But then there's times when you guys are talking about okay, Chris is here's my pattern on the verse. This is what I'm doing on the chorus. What can y'all speak to that a little bit as far as that dynamic inside of the session?
Wouldn't you say that some things are objective, other things are subjective? Mm-hmm. So there are times when we instinctively know through the rules and just from doing it over and over again stylistically.
What the song is asking for.
What the song is asking for based on the groove, based on what the vocal's doing, all the things we've already talked about. And there's certain things we know instinctively what needs to happen. And those are the times that we don't talk about it. It just happens. Mm-hmm. There are other things that are more subjective that, there's a number of things you could do here that would work. Yeah. And so those are the times we need to discuss, I'm going to do this in the verse, we're going to do this in the chorus. Mm-hmm. And usually we have these little buzzwords we can use, and we know what each other's talking about.
Right, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I would say. What would you say to it, Chris?
I mean, that's exactly how I would answer that. It's really song dependent. Mm-hmm. And then beyond that, I think it just depends on the two players. We've been playing together for a long time. You were talking about the way we're set up here where we can see each other, which is really cool. But you know what? If you stuck him outside and I couldn't see him,
it wouldn't matter.
It wouldn't matter.
Yeah. It wouldn't matter.
Because
I'm really not looking at his foot.
Yeah.
I'm just... And sometimes what happens, we might, I'm thinking he's going to go somewhere,
Yeah.
And maybe he doesn't, or I go somewhere and he doesn't. And it was funny. Then we'll each switch back to the
Right.
and we'll be out.
Sorry.
We'll be different on this bar, and then we'll switch to what the other one was doing, and and it's
Right.
funny.
It is
sometimes when that happens, and that's usually when we go back and play the verse again.
Yeah. And that's the subjective thing he was talking about. It's like you could choose. He chose something, I chose something, and then it's like, oh, sorry, I'll go back and grab that.
And about 50% of the time, that may happen that way.
Yeah.
But we usually can correct it within 4 bars. We can correct it and know what we're going to do.
Yeah. And I
think we can fix that 4 bars and we're done.
And I guess sometimes in scenarios there's a producer involved who's directing you as to what they want you to do, whether it's what you wanted to do or not. And I mean,
we don't like those. I'm kidding.
But I mean, those kind of guys, there's not very many
Right.
of those that would, because most producers, particularly in upper echelon, they're going to hire guys that they know. They're going to hire guys they know. I mean, and they don't have to talk about those subtle things usually.
Yeah, you're right.
It's kind of
right.
not stated yet.
and
He knows those guys you're gonna do what the song needs.
Yeah. And the way I view session players, everybody is kind of a mini producer themselves.
Absolutely.
Like he was saying earlier, you kind of hear the finished product before you start tracking.
Yeah.
And most guys think that way, and because of that, there doesn't have to be as much direction.
Yep. It's
on the particulars.
production and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we'll let's kind of wrap up, and I'm going to pose this question to each of you guys, and it's kind of a broad question, but if there's somebody out there that's listening to the podcast and they're a young musician, or maybe they're an older musician, and they want to try to get into the session world, and this is going to be a super difficult question to answer, I think, but like if you have that desire to get into the session recording world, is there a particular piece of advice, or is there a particular thing that you would tell someone who has aspirations to do studio work? Is there something you guys could think of, like, hey, here's a route you should go, here's a thing you should do? Anything come to mind specifically?
The first thing that comes to my mind is you've got to get around it.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you're just getting in and sweeping the floor or going and getting coffee for people, get in. You got to get into the environment, because it's such a mysterious environment for people who've never been in the studio.
Right.
There's a whole culture.
It's a whole terminology.
There's terminology.
Yeah.
There's an etiquette that has to be learned in the studio.
Mm-hmm.
There's all these things. There's a massive culture within it, and if you're not around it, you can't. It's not like you can apply. Okay, I'm going to apply for a job.
Yeah.
It don't work that way.
Right.
You've got to get in somewhere. You've got to prove not only are you a great player, but also do you play well with others in terms of your attitude? So that's a big deal.
That's a
too.
huge deal.
Huge deal.
When you're cooped up in a room with people for 10 or 12 hours, you got to leave your ego at the door, man. But
yeah, exactly.
So anyway, that's a side note.
That is a side note, but attitude is a major thing, and a lot of novice players carry a chip on their shoulder for some reason. You just go ahead and knock it off yourself, and come in, and know that you don't know anything.
Yeah,
that's where you start. Is I don't know anything. I'm here to serve.
Yeah,
and that's kind of the overall attitude that I try to come in with.
Yeah,
and there's sometimes you get a client that really don't know what they're talking about, and you know what, you go, yes sir.
Yeah.
And you play the best version of that you can.
Yeah,
You do what they ask.
Yeah, you do. What about you, Chris, from a drum standpoint, as far as somebody trying to get into the session drummer world?
Man, okay, so I think going beyond what he said, becoming well-rounded, well-versed in multiple genres.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're in the studio game, like I said earlier, you may show up one day, you're playing 5 different genres. You just don't like. We do that here.
Yeah.
Country, jazz stuff. I mean, you just never know. So if you're a player and you're like, man, I'm really good at playing rock, I want to be a session guy, you're limiting yourself. Yeah. So I would work on becoming well-rounded.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. Cat.
You want to work.
Yeah, if you want to stay
Yes,
busy.
if you.
Kat, you got something to add to that from a
man.
guitar standpoint?
Just because I feel like Jeremy's been doing it, man. You've been doing your own overdubs and running your own Pro Tools and stuff for so long. I think this has become like, or it's been super evident to me that like, there's obviously get really good on what you've got, like with your gear. Not an excuse to not have amazing gear, but like it's a like an insurmountable amount. Like it's a shocking amount of gear that you've just, it's a hill that you're always climbing, trying to keep your stuff fresh and updated and competitive. But like get really good on what you got. But with like the session or like even like the overdubs, the recording, like the music recording side of things is so much more heavy in the at home record. Like everybody's got a doll, like they're, everybody's doing stuff at home now. Yep. The more that you record yourself, I can say that the biggest thing for me, not just as a guitar ear, but in producer land, whatever, mix land, whatever, is recording myself just all day, every day, looking at those stacked parts together. And the more that I've dug in, things bothered me here. And then the more that I've started to edit things, the more that you start to grid things, and the more that you stare at that grid all day, every day, I don't think anything has improved like in myself more like in the past few years than timing and tuning. Yeah. It's like, I feel like, for me personally, recording myself pretty much nonstop over the past how many ever years, I've seen just, man, the timing is way better. And that changes things in here. Like now, I mean, guitarist rush, but like now, I really know. I know, like, hey, I've got to recut this thing, or I can't, I know that I've got to. So that's part of going back to the 7,000 takes on the solo 10 years ago, like that. Yeah, that kind of stuff has changed largely because I've gotten better at editing, and like now I'm hearing things differently. My ear's gotten way better, and that's something that you may not think about because you trained, you were doing that kind of ear training without even realizing it way before I feel like things got as at homey as they are now. Yeah. So record yourself, do that some,
and practice with a metronome.
God bless. Yes. I was doing that a couple of weeks ago.
Because here's the thing, and you may think, well, it just holds me back. Well, it should.
That's the point.
But when you get to the point to where you can play with a metronome and it's like breathing, then you're ready for session world.
Yeah.
If you can't do it, and if you struggle with it, you're not ready.
Yeah.
But if you get to the point where you can play with a metronome and it's just like taking a stroll. Mm-hmm. Now you're ready. Because that's huge. If you're timing, tuning, and tone, extremely important.
The 3 T's.
You got to get those 3 things. You got to be expert at those 3 things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, gentlemen, it has been a pleasure having you guys here. We started this morning at 10 o'clock, I guess, so we need to wrap up. But sincerely appreciate you guys hanging out and sharing some of your wisdom on our podcast today. I hope for the people who are out there listening, you can take away a few nuggets of information if you're looking to get into the session musician world, and hopefully today was kind of a inside view and some inside information as to the mysterious world, as Jeremy called it, of session work. So hopefully we're giving you guys some information that if you want to get into this world, that you can use in the future to hopefully become a session musician, because not a lot of people are getting into session work anymore. It's kind of a thing that I've seen from a studio standpoint that, when I do recognize someone with a potential talent, we're, love to bring you in and help you understand this world, because it's not like a super common thing anymore, in my opinion. There are still live sessions going on all around the world, but it's something that I don't want to die away. No. I want to be able to pass along information to the next generation that can have an understanding of, hey, there's 4 or 5 guys or girls in a room, and we're tracking a song, and we're being creative, and we're producing music for people. So I would love for that to continue on, as the years go. So hopefully this will be great for somebody who's listening, And thank you guys again for hanging out with me today. Thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next time on Studio 101 Recording Podcast.